even know why he collect money for God. Is he broke? Is he on food stamps? I mean, does God need some housing? You know what I'm saying? Is he staying in the projects or something?
Cat kept looking the other way.
You wanted Bill Cosby. No disrespect to Dr. Cosby and his form of comedy. Go hire Bill Cosby. But you hired me.
They say Hollywood shines bright on the red carpet, but once the lights cut off, it turns into a war zone of egos, grudges, and secret beefs. And now Eddie Griffin just threw a firebomb into the chaos. At 57, the comedian is finally spilling names. 7 major stars he flat out can't stand.
Ain't he? Talking about that's God's house, like God came to you. Build me a house on 5th and Hill. And you know only like them stained glass ones.
These aren't random nobodies either. They're A-list actors he's worked with, partied with, and gone toe-to-toe with behind the curtain. But the burning question is, why now? Is Eddie chasing revenge, or is he exposing the dirtiest Hollywood secrets that everyone else is too scared to admit? One thing about Eddie Griffin, he never sugarcoats the truth. For decades, he's been the wild card in comedy, refusing to bow down to Hollywood's power games. While most stars kept their mouths shut to protect their paychecks, Eddie was out here calling out the machine, the gatekeepers, and even fellow comics he swore traded their soul for a seat at the table. Now at 57, he's not just pulling the curtain back, he's tearing it clean off. And the names he's dropping, some of the heaviest hitters in comedy. Eddie claims Hollywood doesn't reward real talent anymore. It rewards control. He says the industry tried to silence any comic who was too raw, too real, or too political, while pushing safe comedy that wouldn't shake up the system. In his words, Hollywood doesn't just blacklist you, they whitewash you until you're unrecognizable. And when Eddie looks around, he sees comedians who, whether by choice or not, helped shove him out of the spotlight. That's why he's breaking down the 7 actors and comedians he's been at war with for years. And it all starts with his rocky history with Dave Chappelle. On the surface, Eddie praised Chappelle's genius. But under the surface, it's way messier. Back in the early 2000s, Eddie wasn't some small-time comic. He had Undercover Brother, hit stand-up specials, and was tearing up Hollywood and the comedy circuit. Word on the street is Comedy Central was gearing up to hand Eddie Griffin his own groundbreaking series until Dave Chappelle walked in. Suddenly, all the cash, hype, and spotlight were thrown behind Chappelle's show, while Eddie's projects mysteriously got frozen in place.
In here lying about how they ain't got their donation. So I put an ATM machine by the front door. I needs my money.
Eddie has dropped hints for years that this wasn't some random twist of fate. In interviews, he's slipped in cryptic lines about how Hollywood only lets one black revolutionary shine at a time. To Griffin, the message was loud and clear. The industry crowned Chappelle as their chosen one and pushed him straight into the shadows. Some insiders whisper Eddie's more politically charged comedy had execs shook, and Chappelle looked like the safer bet, at least until he famously walked away from $50 million. But here's the kicker. Fans and comics alike have long speculated that Eddie felt straight up robbed of his spot in comedy history. Rumor has it, he believes Hollywood erased him on purpose just to build Chappelle into the legend we know today. When Chappelle was hailed as the voice of a generation, Griffin allegedly took it like a slap in the face, convinced that if the industry had backed him the same way, he could have been wearing that crown first. And here's where it gets really suspicious. Eddie has hinted that the Chappelle versus Hollywood story we all know isn't the full truth. Some say he believes Chappelle's public rebellion got glorified, while his own battles were painted as bitter or angry. Eddie got branded the troublemaker, while Chappelle got called a genius for doing the same exact thing. Even today, debates light up internet forums about whether Eddie Griffin's career was deliberately sidelined to make space for Chappelle. Was it just bad timing, or was Eddie sacrificed so Hollywood could anoint one king of edgy black comedy? That's the shadow rivalry nobody in Hollywood wants to talk about. But Eddie keeps dropping hints like he's daring someone to challenge him. And then there's Chris Rock. Beloved by mainstream audiences, sure, but to Eddie, Rock represents exactly the type of comedian Hollywood eats up, safe, polished, and willing to play into stereotypes if it gets laughs from white crowds. Griffin hasn't been shy. He's openly accused Rock of selling out to stay in Hollywood's good graces. Eddie Griffin has blasted Chris Rock for what he calls shucking and jiving for Hollywood, claiming Rock's comedy often turns black culture into the punchline instead of the power.
Look, man, reading is fundamental. Fun to mental.
Griffin once even said, Chris Rock made white folks laugh at us, not with us. That line still sparks heated arguments to this day. While many people see Rock as one of the sharpest, most political comedians of his generation, Eddie ain't buying it. To him, Rock is the guy who plays it safe, smart enough to never cross Hollywood's invisible line, the one that can kill your career in an instant. Eddie, on the other hand, built his name on breaking those lines wide open and paying the price every single time. Behind closed doors, the tension only got worse. Insiders claim Eddie resented how Rock was crowned the voice of Black America in Hollywood circles, even though comedians like Griffin, Paul Mooney, and others were pushing boundaries long before Rock's big HBO specials. To Eddie, Rock didn't climb the ladder just on skill. He did it by trimming off the rough edges and serving Hollywood a watered-down version of black comedy they could package, polish, and sell to suburban audiences. And here's where it gets real controversial. Fans of Griffin argue Rock was chosen by the industry precisely because he was less threatening. Rock landed TV shows, talk show spots, blockbuster movie roles, while Eddie's projects were left to die from lack of funding or industry forgetfulness. The pattern looks too clean. Rock gets crowned, Eddie gets sidelined. To this day, Griffin points to Rock's career as a warning that if you want to stay in Hollywood's good graces, you might have to sacrifice your authenticity. This feud runs deeper than personal dislike. It's about two clashing philosophies of comedy. Chris Rock played the game, Eddie Griffin refused, and in Hollywood, only one of those paths leads to glory. But if there's one comedian Eddie goes after even harder, it's Kevin Hart. To Eddie, Hart isn't just another comic. He's the poster child for how Hollywood builds its stars. Eddie swears Hart was handpicked as the safe black comedian, while voices like his, louder, sharper, unapologetic, were silenced, blackballed, or buried under bad press. In Eddie's eyes, Kevin Hart is the perfect industry darling. Family-friendly, non-threatening, and always willing to play the Hollywood game without asking too many questions. Kevin Hart is exactly the kind of comedian corporations drool over. Brandable, marketable, and easy to plaster on billboards. But Eddie Griffin has made it clear, Hart's mainstream success came at a price. Eddie says all the sharp edges, the raw truth, the political bite that defined black comedy for decades got shaved off to make Hart universal.
Very competitive, because I got a friend of mine that had a baby around the same time. Like his baby's probably a week and a half older than mine, but we constantly arguing over whose baby's smart.
And the tension only gets messier. Eddie has thrown shade at how Hart dominates the box office with blockbuster hits that critics often slam as formulaic and watered down. To Eddie, being funny isn't about stacking ticket sales. It's about speaking truths Hollywood doesn't want aired out. And in his eyes, Kevin Hart plays it safe, dodges controversy, and cashes in because he never dares step out of line. Some fans and insiders push it even further, whispering that Hart's rise wasn't just talent, it was strategy. They talk about backroom deals, calculated marketing moves, and even the idea that Hart was propped up to overshadow older, more rebellious comedians like Griffin, Katt Williams, and Monique. So, was Kevin Hart's stardom pure hustle, or was it Hollywood's plan to control the narrative of black comedy? Eddie Griffin definitely leans toward the latter. One thing's for sure, Eddie has no respect for comedians who play it safe just to stay in the spotlight. And in his mind, no one embodies that safe label more than Kevin Hart. But here's the twist. This next feud might shock people. On paper, Eddie Griffin and Katt Williams should have been allies. Both were raw, unapologetically black, and fearless about calling out Hollywood. Both built reputations on comedy that refused to water itself down for mainstream approval. But instead of teaming up, the two became rivals. And the reasons run way deeper than most fans realize. For years, rumors of tension swirled in comedy circles. Eddie would throw slick jabs about Katt's flashy, chaotic lifestyle, while Katt downplayed Griffin's impact whenever peers brought him up. Behind closed doors, Insiders say the two were constantly compared, two rebellious fire starters battling for the same crowd, the same underground credibility, the same spotlight.
Yeah, that was trying to be.
No, I don't think that Kevin Hart. I think Kevin Hart and Katt Williams are funnier than Eddie Griffin.
And Eddie didn't hold back his opinion. He suggested Katt lean too hard into chaos, letting his offstage drama steal the headlines, arrests, fights, bizarre interviews. Eddie says Katt let the madness overshadow the craft. To Griffin, comedy should be about exposing truths and challenging the system, not feeding the tabloids with self-destruction. In his eyes, Katt Williams turned into a walking distraction. Katt Williams' wild antics gave Hollywood the perfect excuse to dismiss raw comedians as unstable. And here's where it gets shady. Some fans believe the industry actually fed the rivalry between Eddie and Katt. Instead of letting two anti-industry firebrands unite, Hollywood kept them divided. Eddie himself has hinted that the system pits comedians against each other, crowning one while blacklisting the other, all to stop any real solidarity from forming. If Eddie's right, then his beef with Katt wasn't just personal, it was orchestrated.
How that drink, nigga, he kept on saying, now, Katt. That's lips. That head.
What should have been a powerful alliance turned into a messy rivalry, exposing an ugly truth. Even the rebels and truth-tellers can end up clashing when they're forced to fight for the same crown. And in Griffin's eyes, Katt was way too reckless to ever wear it right. Now, if you ask Eddie Griffin about Steve Harvey, he'll tell you Harvey is everything he refuses to be. Where Eddie chose rebellion, Harvey chose reinvention. And Eddie has never respected that trade-off. He's accused Harvey of getting way too cozy with Hollywood's gatekeepers, transforming from a gritty stand-up comic into a polished, corporate-friendly brand. To Eddie, Harvey didn't just evolve, he straight up surrendered. Steve Harvey's rise from comedy clubs to daytime TV, game shows, and big-time hosting gigs is usually praised as a success story. But to Griffin, it's the ultimate sellout blueprint. He argues Harvey ditched the raw, unfiltered comedy that made him famous, swapping it out for suits, fake smiles, and safe jokes that keep networks and sponsors happy. Eddie hasn't been quiet about it either. He's aired his views in interviews, throwing shade at Harvey's glossy TV persona. In Griffin's eyes, Harvey stopped being a comedian the second he became Hollywood's spokesperson. Eddie even cracked that Harvey acts more like a politician than a comic, feeding audiences what they want to hear instead of what they need to hear.
They never taught us. When that movie Roots came on, that shocked the out of every black man in this room. And when we just like, what the
And this feud runs deep. Behind the scenes, whispers say Eddie and Harvey never vibed, even back in their Kings of Comedy days. While Bernie Mac and Cedric the Entertainer leaned closer to Eddie's rebellious edge, Harvey always played the businessman of the crew. Insiders say Griffin hated how Harvey cozied up to executives instead of challenging them. And when Harvey's empire exploded into books, talk shows, and mega deals, Eddie took it as proof that Hollywood rewards those who play ball, not those who stay true. The double standard between Steve Harvey and Eddie Griffin runs deep. Harvey is protected, he can survive scandals, awkward slip-ups, even the infamous Miss Universe fiasco, and still walk away with his empire untouched. Eddie Griffin, he never got that kind of safety net. Some of Eddie's fans swear Harvey became Hollywood's golden boy precisely because he toned himself down, while Griffin got punished for refusing to play that game. At the end of the day, Harvey is everything corporate America wants: clean, polished, marketable. Eddie, he's the firecracker Hollywood couldn't control, and that's why the two could never see eye to eye. But if there's one thing Eddie despises more than rival comics, it's the Hollywood machine itself. For decades, he's been brutally honest about how producers tried to box him in, strip away his raw edge, and force him into roles that didn't match his talent. Eddie has blasted Hollywood for taking fearless, outspoken comedians and watering them down until they became safe mascots instead of dangerous truth-tellers. He said many times that he lost huge opportunities because he refused to coon for the camera. In his words, producers loved his energy and charisma, but only if he played into stereotypes of black men. Time after time, he was offered roles as the loud sidekick, the goofy comic relief, or the foolish hustler. And time after time, he said no. Eddie refused to tap dance for a paycheck, even though it cost him dearly. While other comedians played the game and stacked up movie deals, Eddie's career often stalled out, and the fight didn't stop with acting gigs. Even in stand-up, producers tried to water him down. Eddie has claimed that networks wanted him to cut the politics out of his specials, told him to focus on safer jokes that wouldn't ruffle feathers. But Eddie wasn't having it. He refused, and those projects either got shelved or buried with zero promotion. Hollywood wanted the laughs, but not the uncomfortable truths. And insiders whisper it went even further. Eddie Griffin may have been quietly blackballed. Behind closed doors, executives allegedly branded him difficult because he spoke up too much in meetings, challenged the suits, and refused to be controlled. In Hollywood, once you're labeled difficult, the phone just stops ringing. For Eddie Griffin, it was never about lacking talent. It was punishment for refusing to bow down. And here's where the conspiracy creeps in. Eddie has flat out hinted that producers didn't just sideline him, they stole from him. He suggested that ideas he pitched in meetings would mysteriously pop up later in other comedians' specials or even full-blown studio films. Jokes, themes, entire character concepts snatched and repackaged with safer faces attached. To Eddie, this wasn't just shady. It was proof that Hollywood thrives on exploiting black creativity while refusing to credit the source. That battle with producers has haunted him his entire career. It's why, despite being every bit as talented, if not more, than Kevin Hart or Chris Rock, he never reached the same superstardom. Instead of playing along, Eddie chose rebellion, and Hollywood punished him for it. Some say that stubborn streak destroyed his career, but others argue it's exactly why he's still respected today. Eddie never sold out, even when it cost him everything. To this day, he insists Hollywood isn't about talent. It's about control. Play the role they hand you and they'll crown you. Refuse and they'll bury you. And Eddie Griffin, he refused every single time. But Eddie's biggest feud isn't with one comedian, it's with the entire system. For decades, he's accused Hollywood of outright theft, stealing the very soul of black comedy. According to Eddie, the industry has a long pattern. Take the style, rhythm, and raw energy born in Black Comedy Club, then repackage it through white faces who get the sitcoms, the movie deals, and the mainstream applause. The originators get sidelined while the imitators get crowned. And Eddie hasn't held back. He's blasted white comedians for jacking not just jokes, but whole personas. He says they copy the swagger, the cadence, the stage presence of black comics, then sell it back to middle America as if it's brand new. Eddie Griffin has accused Hollywood of sanitizing black creativity, stripping it of its edge and repackaging it into watered-down versions that carry none of the original cultural weight. To him, this isn't just shady, it's straight-up cultural robbery. And he's not the only one to say it. Legends like Paul Mooney, Dick Gregory, and even Katt Williams have all warned that Hollywood only embraces black comedy once it's been filtered, diluted, and made safe. But Eddie, he takes it way further. He says whitewashed comedy exists for one reason: to keep the real pioneers invisible. Instead of rewarding the innovators, Hollywood builds careers on the backs of imitators. And Eddie hasn't been shy about pointing fingers. In interviews, he's hinted that certain white comedians made millions doing routines that black comics had already been perfecting for years. He's even suggested that studio executives deliberately bury black projects while pushing near identical content from white comics just because it's more palatable for mainstream America. To Eddie, this isn't coincidence. It's proof Hollywood doesn't just silence voices, it steals them. The result? Black comedians like Griffin are left fighting for scraps while safer acts are handed the kingdom's keys. Eddie has said this is why so many black comics flame out or get labeled too controversial, because the industry doesn't want the real thing when it can promote a copy. And here's the part that's most suspicious. Eddie doesn't believe this theft is accidental. He says it's part of a calculated system of control. Reward the copies, erase the creators, push the watered-down versions, bury the originals. To Griffin, it's not just about comedy, it's about who gets to control the narrative of black culture in America.
Man does something, it says, John Jones, black list, said black, black, black. Now, if a white man does it, it isn't white man Jones, it's just a man. Black man does it, then any white bigot can point his finger and say, see that? There they go again. Well, that isn't right.
So while Eddie Griffin has plenty of beef with individual comedians, this is the feud that cuts the deepest. It's not personal, it's systemic. And Eddie has made it clear, as long as Hollywood keeps whitewashing black creativity, he's gonna keep calling it out, no matter how unpopular it makes him. At the end of the day, Eddie Griffin's enemies list goes way beyond comedians he doesn't vibe with. It's a roadmap to how Hollywood really works. On the surface, it might look like petty grudges, Chappelle overshadowing him, Chris Rock selling out, but Eddie swears it's way bigger than that. Kevin Hart playing it safe, Steve Harvey cozying up to execs, Katt Williams spiraling in chaos. But when you look closer, a bigger picture jumps out. Eddie Griffin's not just beefing with comedians, he's beefing with the machine that created them. To Griffin, these rivalries are proof that Hollywood isn't about talent at all. It's about control. The system handpicks winners and losers, crowns safe comedians, silences the raw ones, and thrives on division to make sure outsiders never band together. In Eddie's mind, the industry didn't just push him aside. It used his style, his influence, then buried him so others could shine in his place. Call it jealousy, call it bitterness, or call it brutal honesty. Eddie keeps pointing out how suspicious it is that the loudest, most rebellious voices in comedy rarely make it to the very top.
He lived past the end of September, because he is a dead man walking.
And that's the real controversy. Maybe Eddie Griffin isn't just venting. Maybe he's telling the ugly truth nobody wants to face. Hollywood doesn't reward authenticity. It rewards obedience. It doesn't protect innovators. It protects brands. Too raw, too political, too fearless. Then you're either blackballed, sabotaged, or quietly replaced. Think about it. Griffin had the charisma, the talent, the track record to be a household name right next to Chappelle or Hart. Instead, he became the cautionary tale. Some people say it's his attitude. Others believe Hollywood made sure of it. And here's the wild part. Eddie knows it. At 57, he doesn't care anymore. He's naming names, ripping the curtain wide open, and confirming what fans have whispered for years. Hollywood is rigged, and he refuses to play along. So the real question isn't who does Eddie Griffin hate? It's this. What does it say about Hollywood that a man this talented, this fearless, and this brutally honest was never allowed to be the megastar he should have been? Maybe Eddie Griffin is bitter. Or maybe he's the last comedian brave enough to tell the truth about an industry built on lies. That's it for today's video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment with your thoughts, and I'll see you on the next one.